Chapter 13, The White Room. The passages are for the servants, Novak explained, as the library shelves silently returned to their original position. Towering Heights has 8 floors, all with hidden doors and passages. My room's on the 5th floor, and it has a passage that leads out from the back of my wardrobe. Darkus felt a thrill of excitement as he followed Novak down the narrow corridor. The servants' passages were grey and functional, lit by floor lights, and a stark contrast to the front of the house. They came to a brass gate with a handle. It was an old-fashioned lift, the kind Darkus had seen in movies. "Get in," he obeyed, and Novak leant across from him, pulling the gate closed. The lift whirred and lurched downwards. "Where are we going?" Darkus asked. "The White Room. It's Mater's office and where she meets people." "That's where your friends will be." "They're not my friends," Darkus said. "They're my enemies." "You're so lucky to have real enemies," Novak sighed. "I have to make mine up." "They mustn't see me." "Don't worry," Novak fluttered her eyelashes. "No one will see us." "Good," said Darkus, feeling uncomfortable. A delicate bell chimed, announcing that they were on the 1st floor. He stepped out of the lift and set off after Novak, who was running silently down the corridor on the tips of her toes. She turned left and right and suddenly stopped and pushed her fingers out against the wall, making a hidden panel pop out. Putting her finger to her lips, she whispered, "We must be very quiet. If Mater hears us, we'll be in trouble." Darkus nodded, and they entered a room the size of a bathroom, containing nothing but a bench covered with a sheepskin throw. Novak motioned for Darkus to sit. Opposite the bench was a window into the room next door. "It's a two-way mirror," Novak whispered, sitting down beside him. "We can see them, but they can't see us. Mater uses it to watch models or clients when they're having dress fittings. Look," she pointed up at the speakers in the corners of the room. "We can hear them too." Lucretia Cutter, instantly recognisable by her lab coat and walking sticks, was standing in front of the mirror with her back to them. Darkus swallowed. The confusion of fear and anger that bubbled up inside him when he looked at her. He studied the room beyond the mirror, memorising every detail to tell Virginia and Bertolt. There wasn't much furniture, and everything was either white or transparent. To the right was the laboratory bench, like the ones at school, only much cooler. The worktop was made of the same shiny white stone as the floor, a silver gas tap rising up out of it like a swan's neck, and beside it there was a powerful-looking microscope. Below the bench was a row of fridges with see-through doors. Darkus could see stacks of Petri dishes and racks of test tubes inside them. A clear perspex shelf stretched across the opposite wall, and Darkus registered the 3 white sculptures sitting on it. A human figure, a beetle, and the DNA double helix. Lucretia Cutter was standing behind a sleek glass desk, which was bare except for a white telephone and a framed photograph. Facing her, in their yellow and purple suits, were Pickering and Humphrey, looking ridiculously out of place in the spotless room. Darkus couldn't help but smile at the sight of them. Pickering was pointing at Humphrey. "His revolting habits led to the infestation. He is disgusting. I, on the other hand, wash 3 or 4 times a day." "Shut up or I'll mash you!" Humphrey lifted his massive fist above Pickering's head. "Silence!" Lucretia Cutter's voice cut through the cousins' bickering. "You will give over your property to me for 48 hours to remove every last beetle." Pickering and Humphrey nodded like eager puppies. "Whatever you desire," Humphrey spluttered, spraying spittle across her dark glass desk. "Ugh," Pickering squealed. "I'll be paying you handsomely for the beetles and the inconvenience, so I expect you to do exactly as I ask." "Inconvenience?" Pickering clasped his hands together. "No inconvenience at all. It will be a pleasure." "You will move out of the building for the duration of the operation," she continued. "What?" the cousins cried in unison. "Where will we go?" Humphrey asked. "But we can help you," said Pickering. "I won't be doing it myself, Mr. Risk. I will be sending one of my men, Dankish and Craven, to deal with your mound of beetles." "You did say it was a mound." The cousins nodded. "A 6-figure sum will be transferred to your bank accounts on the day that you leave, and the funds will clear once the beetles have been removed from your premises and counted. Then you will be free to return. During the interim, I will make my private suite at the Empress Hotel available for you to stay in. You will not be permitted to talk about this arrangement with anyone. Do you understand? If you do, you forfeit the fee." Pickering and Humphrey nodded again. Lucretia Cutter walked around the desk and held out her perfectly manicured hand, her expression unreadable behind the enormous sunglasses. "Do we have a deal?" Humphrey leapt up. "It's a deal," he said, bending down and kissing the back of her hand. Lucretia Cutter's gold lips curled with disgust. "Wait!" Pickering got to his feet. "What about the council? They know about the infestation. They want us to clear the yard. They said—" "The council will not bother you again, Mr. Risk. I'll make sure of that." Lucretia Cutter pulled her hand away from Humphrey. "How do you think I found out about your beetles in the first place?" She laughed, a low, guttural sound. "I have people everywhere." "Right, yes, I see," said Pickering, clearly not seeing anything at all. She pressed a button on the white telephone in front of her. "Gerard!" The butler entered with a tray containing 2 documents and 2 gold pens. "Sign and date the last page." Lucretia Cutter held out her hand so that Gerard could clean it with a steaming hot towel. He pulled from a cylinder in his pocket. Darcus crept closer to the mirror. He felt vulnerable so close to the glass, and had to remind himself that no one in the room could see him. But he now had a clear view of the framed photograph on her desk. The picture was of 9 smiling people in white coats, sitting in 2 rows. Printed in a white box at the bottom of the picture were the words, "Faber Project." "What's the matter?" Novak whispered, alarmed. "Are you ill? You look like you're going to be sick." "That picture," Darcus pointed. "What about it?" Novak came to stand next to Darcus. "Oh, that came from when she was at university. You can hardly recognise her now. She looks so different. Look, her hair is all messy and scraped back. She's wearing glasses and she's smiling." She sighed. "She looks nice, doesn't she?" Darcus's heart was thumping against his ribs. "What's so interesting about it?" "That," Darcus cleared his throat, finding he couldn't get the words out, "is my dad." Novak leant forward. "Which one?" "The one with the beard next to your mum." Novak stared at Darcus. "Well, he doesn't look like you at all." "Novak," Darcus looked at her in the eye, suddenly finding his voice. He blurted out suddenly, "Someone's kidnapped my dad and I don't know why." "Kidnapped?" Novak looked frightened. A shadow fell across the mirror and they both looked up. Lucretia Cutter was admiring her reflection in the glass. As she turned her head from left to right, it was as if she were looking right through the mirror into the room. Darcus froze. If there hadn't been glass between them, Lucretia Cutter would have felt his breath on her cheek. "She can't see us," Novak whispered, as though to reassure herself as much as Darcus. "She can't hear us." In the room, Humphrey had signed the contract and was holding the paper out to Gerard. Pickering made a show of reading every word of his, then arranged his face in a thoughtful expression. "Perhaps we could discuss this over dinner?" "There's nothing to discuss." Lucretia Cutter turned away from the mirror. "You either want to sell me the beetles or you don't." Darcus let out a huge sigh, aware that he'd been holding his breath. "Come on, sign it, Pickers. It's £500,000, Humphrey said. That's £250,000 each." "I can do the maths, Humphrey, thank you." Pickering looked at Lucretia Cutter. "You must really like killing beetles to pay such a large amount of money to do something we'd normally have to pay for ourselves." Lucretia Cutter leant over the desk menacingly. "I'm a collector, Mr. Risk," she hissed. "A very wealthy collector. I've paid more money for a handbag than the figure I'm offering you for those beetles. It's entirely up to you whether you want the money or not." Leaning back on her sticks, she propelled herself towards the door. "This conversation is over." She looked back at the mirror. "I have something I need to take care of." "Get under the bench," Novak sucked in her breath, pulling at Darcus. "She knows we're here." "What? I thought you said—" "Do as I say. She's coming." Novak kicked the back of Darcus's knee and his legs folded underneath him. "Quick!" Finding himself on the floor, Darcus started to protest, then heard the heart-stopping click of the door handle. He rolled under the bench and squashed himself against the wall. There was a muffled crunch as Baxter's jar smashed inside his rucksack. Novak pulled the sheepskin rug down to hide him, then sprang away from the bench. "Meta!" Darcus saw the ends of Lucretia Cutter's walking sticks and the hem of her long black velvet skirt as she swirled into the room. "What do you think you're doing?" Darcus heard a squawk, and Novak's feet were lifted off the ground, dangling in the air. "I'm sorry, Darcus's heart was jumping with fright. Lucretia Cutter was shockingly strong.